Hello, world. Am I supposed to be asking how everybody's doing? Welcome to Chale Wote 2020. We're transmitting from Usher Fort in Accra. Um, this was built in the 1600s by the Dutch. It changed hands a few times. Well, once it changed hands into the British, but also it's a really poignant moment for all of us here to gather in this space that has been a place of suffering for over 400 years. This was a trading post, and particularly trading in human beings, enslaved people. And later on, it was transformed into a prison. So over the last 400 years, this has been a place of suffering. It's like a warehouse for the damned. And somebody says this is us being here, making art, and having these conversations, jamming. It's our ancestors' wildest dreams because they would have never dreamt that anything of this kind would happen here. I'm happy to be here. My name is Aikwe. To my left is Sarah Black, an artist, Nana Frema, Nico Wayo, and our OG Ed Gavua. Well, they're going to introduce themselves, but all of them also come with their own history. Nico Wayo's work, I'm particularly fascinated by his work because in the 90s he used to make, well, he still does, but not so much. But he used to be one of the go-to artists for these remade movie posters, hand-painted posters. So if you're familiar with that, this is one of the artists who was doing that. Ed Gavua does uses a lot of recycled material to create his work, and he has a whole history and story around it. Nana Frema, I really love her work. She has a color palette that is really exciting, and also very much into the fantastic. Sarah Black, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your work yourself? um, yeah, well, Sarah Black's work is really fascinating because it's so layered and filled with so much, and I particularly like what she does with sticks and stick man and stick figures, and how she conceptualizes her work around stick images and what they transform it into. And she was also very much into myth making, mythology, which is also connected to our conversation today. So welcome. We're transmitting from Usher Fort in Accra. Chale Wote 2020 is a virtual edition. So it's just us in the fort with the artists, and nobody's allowed to come in for obvious reasons. There's this disease going around that's devastating the whole world. Lots of people have died in connection to this thing. So this year we're unable to set up the festival like we usually do, over 100,000 people showing up. We can have that, but we still can make art in this rather mysterious place. I mean, certain times of the day when you touch the walls, you can still feel the spirit, you can still feel the energy. Some of it is foul, some of it is latent. Um, but it's exciting to be here and to be able to make work in this space. So I'd like to say a big thanks to the crew, who have worked over the last 6, 7 months to pull this off. Um, it's been really exciting, and we're looking forward to more interesting things. Anyway, um, our discussion today is centered around myth making, cosmology, and art in relation to African communities, and particularly Ghana, but also not limited to Ghana. And I'd like to have your thoughts on said topic, and I want us to have a fun conversation. I'm really not into this buzzword, fake intellectual thing. And I know that you guys are not like that too. So, so let's just have a fun conversation. Anyway, I'd like to start with Nico Wayo. Your thoughts on myth making in connection to art in African societies.
Well, simple. This is how I see it. Art itself has an emotional power. It carries a lot of spirit. Whilst you're working, anything that pushes you, your inspiration, your thoughts, your experiences, transforming them into art is one of those, as I know. And sometimes we do forget ourselves, focusing on the physical, forgetting the spiritual world. Anywhere you present yourself, your spirit is what presents you. Your spirit is what presents you, not the way you look. So it is an important theme for me for this Chale Wote 2020. Thank you.
Anything to add to that, Dr. Ed?
No, not really. But then, I think
We're interested in your thoughts around the subject, so you don't really
well,
have to continue from where you left off.
it's one of the greatest achievements for Ghana and the world at large, because this has been long awaiting, and I think Chale Wote has brought it to the fore that the whole world is beginning to borrow from. So it's a very good cause to me, one of the brilliant ideas ever.
Dr. Ed is shouting out the festival. You. Go ahead. Any of you can answer it.
Okay, so we all know that art is not about only the beauty we see. It talks about the culture, it talks about the religion, it talks about our beliefs and anything we know about. So art has also influenced us in so many ways, and now we can see it in books, we can see it in movies, the creative ideas, the universe, how the beginning, the ending, good, evil, how it's being told, the story behind it, how amazing, and the kind of feeling and expression behind the things we see. It's really great.
Okay. I think mythology is a very interesting topic in art, because it's, when you look at myth and then the society, you realize a lot of myths are told about societies because they try to like explain why some existing traditions are there. So it's like basically your life, you go into it. So art is also a way of living. Yeah. So
The myth making is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that
art is myth making.
art could
Okay.
be myth making.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So I would like for us to like backtrack and just start use Gamashi, Jamestown, Ashertown as like our launch pad and examine the mythology here, and the most obvious one is the one about the water and the stories that fishermen tell when they go on the water. There are stories of other worlds, other beings, of things unknown when you go deep sea fishing. And there's also like a rule amongst them that when you see things on the water, when you come back, you don't see it. Because I think on one hand, it's too fascinating for people who have not experienced it, and one might come off as crazy, But then also there's all this ritual that goes on before they get on the water. There's a particular way they dress. There are things that they say. There are incantations that are said. There's music. There's songs that are sung before they get on the water. But then all of these stories of fishermen experiencing a completely different type of existence on the water it's spread across the world, not just from fishermen in Jamestown. When you go into most fishing communities, these stories are there, and all of them could not be lying. They couldn't all be telling lies. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm interested in the memory that or the myth that dwells in these memories, or because myths are also like time capsules when you think about it. You know, songs capture parts of history, things are added to it, things are taken out. But then when you hear the stories, it speaks of a particular time, you know, and that's why in our communities oral history is so important, because our history is a lot of the time is oral, and the fantastic, the supernatural is captured through mythology, and this also manifests in our rites of passage. You know what I mean? So I think that because we are so used to it, it's easy to take it for granted. You know, it's easy to take it for granted because it's part of our lives, and we experience it every day. So then somehow, I don't want to say it loses its value, but then I think it becomes a fascinating thing for people who are not in direct contact with it, or like researchers or academics who come here and record people's stories, and you know, write dissertations and get, you know, attain PhDs or doctorates based on somebody else's knowledge. You know, for me, I'm interested in distilling these memories, these knowledge clusters and knowledge cells within our mythology, and translating it into something more contemporary. You know, I don't know if any of you would like to discuss that. You know, distilling our mythology into contemporary knowledge. You know, because what we're doing here is also manufacturing knowledge. Really, yeah.
Well, it just got to me to understand that this year Chale Wote has got a lot of people sick in their bed still, because it never came to be for them. And for the fact that it's not been so, it's keeping them writing down the past and about to write about the future, which this will also be part of it. Because some called me and said, Frank, are we coming? We want to come. And then it's Corona. So that alone tells them that there was something that Jamestown had. When I was growing up, I realized there was a place like the first Seaview Hotel, which happens to be in Jamestown.
That's the first hotel in Accra.
Good.
The very first hotel.
And then we had the first UTC, it's a Kingsway.
Yeah.
So
the
before
first mall.
all these shopping malls springing up in various places in Accra, Jamestown had its first. Now, I also foresee Jamestown as a country on its own.
It is.
Which
Jamestown is a country.
Which you cannot take the beauty of it. Every street in Jamestown has food for ready to sell, for eat, for everybody. It's healthy. In respect, I remember I had a project with a friend, which we want to redefine Accra, and they said, no, we want to live like this. We don't want anything else. And it was like, wow, you guys are not living well. I said, who told you? We are living very well. We eat fresh fish every day. We eat kenke, and we eat pepper, and we are strong, and we can fight anybody. So
they can fight.
Which you see that the Jamestown you think you know has other things you don't really know about them. And I think Jamestown made Chale Wote what it means to be real. In the sense that when you say Chale Wote, it's very common among the people of Jamestown. So they are taking it as their
They
their
own it.
soul.
Yes, it's a soul.
It's part of them. It has transformed them. And I can tell you that if everything is set to be Jamestown next year, Chale Wote probably might start taking fees for people coming to watch this festival across group.
So I think there are certain things that we grew up believing that became part of our lives. So sometimes you might come from a family that practices a certain way of doing something, but then you don't really know why. All these, most of them stem from myths. So I think in contemporary times, it's very important because it helps you know where different people are coming from. So, yep, that's like
Sarah Black. Sorry, Nana
Frema.
Frema. Nico, wayo. Do you guys have things to say?
Well, it's all good. The way we live here in Jamestown, you can see people living together, bringing their spirits together. Even the way we do our outdooring is a myth. You know, it's a myth. It's an art, like performing art, and all that. We shouldn't forget all this. Even the way we do our funerals. Let's not forget this. It's all part of art. So putting this in a simple way, I say art is life and life is art. Everything we do is art, performing, whatever is surrounding us. But then it deals with the spirit. Growing up, I witnessed our grandparents, they were doing, worshiping other things. The spirit still lives and it's a part of us. Let's not do away with certain things. Thank you.
I want to ask all of us a question. Okay, so are we supposed to learn from history and become better? Or we're supposed to learn history and then stay with that history and not become better?
I think that as humans, it's important that we continuously evolve. And whatever better means, I think that humans strive to live in abundance. If we talk about abundance, then we have to think about our society. Do we live in abundance? And if not, why? Because there are reasons for the way things are. It's very structural, and we have a history of enslavement. Like we're inside one of the most active forts for trafficking people. This is like a human trafficking factory. We're inside over 400-year-old human trafficking structure. Are people still being trafficked? Yes. Maybe not visibly like this, but then people are still getting moved across the water. People are getting shipped into different places. Yeah, and and then their lives are no different from enslaved people from 500 years ago. You know what I mean? But in connection with myth making, also, lots of things have been created around our society that are not necessarily historical. But then that's also shaped how this society has evolved. I'll tell you a short story in relation to. So let me give an example of how myths become spiritual beliefs, and also the things that happen within our material reality. So since we're in Jamestown, we can talk about Badangme people. And when you're born within Ghana societies, from the first day to the 8th day, from the first to the 7th day, you are not human. You are referred to as it. On the 8th day, you become human, and then you're given a name. For gods, on the 8th, at dawn on the 8th day, they bring you out and they show you to a star called Chichobi. It is believed that Chichobi is Sirius B. There's a belief that the child came from that star. So a ritual is performed, and then this child is lifted into the sky, well, pointed into the sky, and shown to Chichobi to let Chichobi know that the traveler has arrived and it's amongst us and it's human now. People might not necessarily think that, oh, humans come from stars, but then globally, from stories to film to literature, there are consistent references to people migrating from the stars. And this is a typical example of a religious belief that's also connected to myth. So more or less, it says that the people in this community are star travelers. They come from the stars. But then this is also sort of lost within contemporary history and practice because of other forms of belief that have sort of taken over our contemporary spaces, And I'm particularly interested in how we can upgrade that history or that myth, because I think that it holds truth. If we have talking about the stars, the Dogon in Mali, they had charted the stars way before Western academics figured it out, and they couldn't even admit to themselves that these indigenous people knew about the stars before the so-called advanced societies, and now they have created a myth. How we are represented, how we're positioned within types. So, to sum it up, a lot of things that are passed up as history about Africa and things, it just myth. There are things that these colonialists came and wrote about us and forced us to believe it. And I think it's also very present to this day. And sometimes you see it in our curriculums, a reinforcement of myths that make us seem as an unevolved group of people, And I think that art gives us a way to distill that, to make it a lot more simple for people to understand, and also to draw knowledge from the past into our present, because there's such an awareness, particularly in this society, of things that relate to our past, the glorious and the not so glorious,
Well, adding up to it, I think keeping our history and bettering it, it's a great idea. Thinking of myself when we were kids, there were these games that brought us together passionately. Something like Alukoto, Asongoli. Alukoto, it's a game, that we use. It brought us together passionately. And even our parents, when we come together, they tell our stories, Nancy and all that. But now it's kind of fading away. Those connections is a myth. passionately coming together always is a myth which is now fading away. So sometimes we just have to keep some of the histories and then practice, to the better. Thank you.
Yeah, I also think it's necessary to do both. So there are certain aspects of history that needed to be changed. Like if you take the female genital mutilation stuff, like it's not everything about history that you need to maintain, but then the ones that preserve our culture. Because some were dehumanizing a lot, yeah. But then I think the ones that encourage relationships between people, societies should maintain. And I also find something you said very interesting because how art sometimes tells history. If you look at the history of art, even painting, like as painters, Black people weren't really portrayed. And it's not like someone voted or someone came to say that Black people weren't portrayed. But then if you take paintings that were done from and so you'd see the change.
Which, are you talking about a particular period?
From the Renaissance, even before, Black people were painted as slaves. The only time you say Black person in the painting is as a slave or something. Yeah. So all these, like, I feel art helps to preserve history. Let's say, I think they work hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead.
To cap it up, because I'll be borrowing from the past as well when we still have our parents or our moms telling our daughters to choose carefully even if they are buying fabrics from the market, because there are certain fabrics that have certain symbols that have certain preferences to certain people, whereby you can see if you are going for a funeral, there's this brand. If it's a marriage ceremony, there's this brand. If you are just about putting bet the naming ceremony, so we have also borrowed from that which has uphold us and is giving us up until we will not stop. Otherwise, this history will also fail.
I'm really excited you brought that up. These symbols in the locally manufactured fabric, what they mean, and then the energy they carry. And sometimes you walk into places and you wear a certain outfit or a certain type of fabric, and it puts
Yeah,
people off.
describe.
Yes, there are certain people who do not do well when you walk into their spaces wearing an outfit that traditionally here is meant for funerals. It is believed that you're bringing bad energy, bad luck into the space. There's a strong belief in the power of symbols, and the aesthetical value that these symbols carry, and their meanings and how they affect our material reality.
Certain people could just wear black on Fridays, if not white.
Mm.
I just used black, and I was asked why.
On your wedding day,
And I didn't care. I didn't have any bad negative vibe about what black means. Black makes me confident. Black brings me out. It gives me a whole yeah. That was my color.
Black.
Yeah. And it makes me feel bold. Like I don't see anybody.
is it because you're an artist?
Nah, I don't know if it's because of that, but I actually feel comfortable when I'm wearing black.
It could be because you're an artist.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so because everybody has a certain energy with the color.
Yeah.
You know what black means to a lot of people.
But I'm not,
Morning.
yeah. It gave me a very great energy on that day.
She's okay with it. And
You
once
should have
you're
seen me.
Once you are okay with it, you don't need to
I guess so for me, I guess my takeaway is that we are on the precipice of something of a global turn, of a major turn that will happen globally. It's happening as we speak.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to recreate our societies. We have the opportunity or the ability to recreate our societies, to recreate our history, you know, and there's all this knowledge that is structured into our music, into our cultural references, into our oral history. That I mean, that by itself would not be enough because it's like a software that needs to be upgraded. But then the thing that you're going to upgrade itself is a treasure, you know. And in a society like this that is so unaware and very deliberately cut off from our history, you know, if you get out of this space now and you speak to a young person across the street, people who even live here, they have no connection to our history of enslavement or what this structure represents, you know. And how long has this country been independent and we still have no memory of that? It's not an accident, you know. It's not an accident that memory is the most important component for human evolution, or particularly for a society like this. You have no memory. You have no.
We probably might have, but then the timeline.
Well, I think that that's from the things that the biggest events that happen in our lives for lots of people. You know, people think that this country started in 1957. And technically, you know, yeah, they're right. But then our history goes way, way past 1957. And, you know, colonial invasion, it goes way past that. You know, and I think that now we have an opportunity to restructure our society as artists, you know. And for me, I'm interested in how we can employ mythology in this restructuring exercise, basically. And I think that that's what we need to think about more. For people in Jamestown and other marginalized communities who do not have this information, how do we simplify it to them using symbols, using cosmology, using colors, you know, using art, you know, in very simple ways. You can compress 1,000 years of history into a photograph or a photo that translates a particular time.
When did this come into existence that people are so naive about? People don't even know colors exist. So therefore, don't even know across the street, this is blue, this is green, this is red. Because was it not taught in school those days?
Well, I think I spent most of my time in this country, and I went to school in this country, and I do not remember in any of our curriculum any subject that details what really happened here, you know. And I think I went to some posh schools, but you know, no. I think that the closest you come to hearing anything is when you study African traditional religion. But even with that, like when you read the text, they make it seem like it was some other people, you know. But it wasn't. I mean, people snatched here. And also, you know, we need to question ourselves, you know, that what kind of society did we have then that tolerated people getting, you know, human trafficking, basically brutal human trafficking, which is what it was. You know, what kind of society permitted that? You know, what kind of society, what kind of people profited off of enslavement of other people, you know? And how can we move past that with lessons from the past, but also with the knowledge of how it happened, you know, and how the society has been sort of broken down and dismantled, you know, because of that past that we carry. And there hasn't been any grand effort to sort of, I think Kwame Nkrumah tried. And we all know what happened to him. But then I think that, you know, everything is up for grabs now from where I stand. And I think that artists have great responsibility to participate in the restructuring of the society. And I think that our past and our history, our myths and cosmologies have a lot to do, or have a major role to play in that restructuring, you know. And sometimes it's just an idea, you know, planting an idea in people's heads, and they'll run with it, really.
But when institutions are not really there, how will they stick to be?
I think that we cannot rely on institutions. I mean, unless you did not grow up here, we cannot really rely on institutions. This is the best time for do it yourself. You know, this is the best time to create outside of what society has structured for us. You know, this is the best time to draw from the fantastic, you know, because I mean, other societies have done it. Yeah, I don't know, between Disney, Marvel, you watch all those things, and it's fascinating. But a lot of those stories are from here also, and we have even more fascinating stories, you know. And I think that as artists, we have an opportunity to create new memories that help us evolve in the society, and that's our core responsibility, you know, as we are on the precipice of this major change globally.
I think also that's our responsibility as artists, because we have to educate people, we have to enlighten people on certain things. You don't have to wait for an institution, because as creative people, I feel you've been given something. Not everyone is creative in their own way, but then as artists, right, you have like that burden. You should have that burden to change something in your society. So it could be just by talking about these things in different art forms, in movies, in through painting, through like other installations, everything.
I think we're getting signals that we're out of time, so we need to be wrapping up.
No, yeah, that's just what you have to, you know, the art scene is quite expensive. That's why most people cannot afford to be an artist. So it's a core mandate that you being an artist have to sacrifice yourself. That is where most people don't want to turn out to remain as an artist. If in certain families and they say you're an artist, like you have no. And this is where the issue starts.
Somebody says, or I should say, I read somewhere that, you know, use what you have to get what you need.
Yeah.
Right? I think that if it's access you're talking about, then we need to redefine mediums of practice, you know, and not necessarily focus on like the traditional mediums that people use to produce art. You know, what can you find? You know, all you need is your inspiration and your emotions, you know, and what can you find to express it? And I think that one doesn't need to restrict how one practices a particular art form, you know. And you know, you can use rocks, you can use sand, you can use plants, you can use anything that you don't have to pay for is a medium for your practice, you know. So yes, I know that, you know, we spent like a ridiculous amount of money buying paint, just paint, you know, that could pay my bills for the whole year, really. Yeah. You know, and then creating all these canvases and wood and, you know, yeah, that's expensive. But then also, maybe we also need to think about other ways and other mediums of creating, you know, and put this money that we spent somewhere else. you know, and that's how we need to think as artists. There need to be a radical shift, you know, in how we practice art and how we think about art.
I want to add something to what you said. So I think it's because most people are used to like, okay, I want to do a painting, so it has to be on the canvas, or this is the thing for this kind of work. But we have to try and break that trap that we are in. You could do whatever you want to do without the usual medium or what you're known for. I think it's the concept or whatever you want to put out. So if you're thinking about, okay, I don't have money, and you, this is the message you want, so you can even start writing on walls as long as you're not caught. I'm not encouraging anything illegal. You could ask for permission.
You shouldn't say you're not encouraging. People should just express.
And explore. Yeah.
That's how I started to draw.
Oh, yeah, it's
drawing on
okay.
walls and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, the state here is the biggest vandalizer. You know, and we need to acknowledge that. Stop work.
Yeah.
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 You know,
By Amma.
exactly. I hear. I wasn't on sound. I was saying that the state is the biggest vandalizer. The Ghanaian state is the biggest vandalizer, and we see it in our communities. You know, if you're building, if they think that you don't, your building doesn't have a permit, they're coming right in big red. Produce permit, remove now. By AMA. You know, the state is a habitual vandalizer. So we shouldn't feel a certain way about expressing ourselves on walls. It's what this country needs, what this space needs, is a radical shift in imagination and how we approach art and art making. You know, we need to completely leave our practice and set up something completely different. You know, and there's a lot here to write about. There's a lot here to paint about. There's a lot here to make movies about. But I feel like somehow we don't pay attention to that, and there's this pandering towards the Western gaze, which is really problematic. You know, but it also comes from a lack of knowledge of self and awareness of history. You know. Anyway, it's been great having all of you here. Time is far spent. Again, Sarah Black, Nana Frema, Nico Wayo, Dr. Ed Gavua. Really great having you on this talk, and I hope we get to do this again sometime. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.